All right. I think just in the conscious of time, we'll go ahead and get started because we only got 30 minutes with y'all. We want to make sure we make it count. So my name's Hunter Salamani. I am the president and founder of Pathways and PM&R. Super excited to have everyone here with us tonight. I think this is going to be an amazing event. If you haven't had the pleasure of meeting our panelists, you're in for a real treat. Some of the most amazing people I've met. So a couple quick kind of overview of tonight. We'll have 30 minutes with our program directors, and then following that, we'll have 30 minutes with the resident panel who will be available as well to answer any other additional questions that you have. We're going to start with mostly the questions that people submitted, and then after time, if there's time after that, then we'll kind of open it up. Another couple quick announcements. We're planning to have our websites released hopefully by the beginning of next month. Also planning to have a new guide coming out next month and a new podcast episode next week. So a lot of cool things going on. I think the best way to stay up to date, if you haven't already, I'll drop a link to our email list. You can join to get the latest information. So without further ado, I think we should get started. So tonight we are super blessed to have three wonderful program directors carving time out of their busy schedule, especially right in the middle of application season. So really appreciate y'all's time. We have Dr. Finkel. She is at the University of Missouri, PM&R program director. And we have Dr. London. He is at the University of Michigan, neurology program director. But I think he has a ton of wisdom that will go for PM&R applicants as well. And then last but not least, Dr. Preto, Mayo Clinic in Rochester program director. So thank y'all so much for coming to spend some time with us this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Hunter. This is great.
So really the kind of objective I wanted to kind of accomplish with this is, going through applications. I remember like after I finished my interview, there's like this just black hole of, what happens from that time to the time match day from the other side of things in the programs. And so I'm really hoping to shine some light on that so we can kind of just have some transparency for the applicants who are extremely stressed right now and kind of really just wondering what's happening. So I thought maybe we could just start by having each of y'all just take a couple minutes to kind of share, it doesn't have to be in super fine detail, but what happens from like when the applicant closes their laptop on interview day until what does the programs do after that? And then all the way up to like making your rank list. What does that kind of look like? Just the next steps. I don't know if anyone wants to take charge with it.
Yeah, I can probably go over some things. Try not to get in too much detail. I can answer more questions later. But so we usually will interview 5 applicants in a half day, one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon. After the morning interview session, after all the applicants have been interviewed by all of our committee members, we do get together and meet. We will discuss how things went with the interview. We all have certain questions that we ask that assess different things. And so just kind of go through a scoring sheet and do a score for the interview. We look at their letters of rec, have a score for that, for the dean's letter, transcripts, so performance in preclinical time, and also in the clinical rotations, research, the USMLE Comlex, their personal statement, and then kind of like an intangible section and with like that fits volunteering, different experiences, committees, leadership, passion for things, etc. During this discussion, we'll get any input from the residents who are on our committee in regards to their interview, as well as feedback from the social event that we host the night before, the virtual social event. And then if they were a visiting student with us, we'll get feedback from the resident group at that time as well, and from the attendings who might have worked with them, and from sometimes from our program coordinators who might have something to add as well. So everyone can potentially have input there. What we're doing with our scoring sheet is just kind of looking at our specific program submission and what our aims and goals are with our program and our institution, and looking to see how each applicant will contribute high value based on our specific mission and goals. And so we go through a scoring sheet. We end up getting a score for each applicant, and then we actually will keep like a rolling rank list. So after each interview day, we will rank them, and then after the next interview day, we kind of fit in and keep a rolling list through the season. At the end of the season, we do have a rank night. I usually host a fun night with our interview crew. We have dinner together, and then we kind of finalize our rank list at that rank night. We'll submit on NRMP, make sure that gets done prior to the optional in-person visit that we host as well, to make sure that we keep that no stakes. So is that kind of what you wanted, Hunter?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's very thorough, and I think that's helpful to see that it's not just the programs are just out having fun, messing around. There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of people who are contributing as well. So that was perfect. Thank you.
Claire, do you want to go ahead?
No, you can go ahead and go.
Okay, so as Hunter mentioned, I'm a neurology program director, not a PM&R program director, and I think that there's obviously a lot more similarities than differences in terms of how we rank this, but I also think maybe I'm in a little bit of a unique position on this panel because I have no interest in impressing any of you, because I know none of you are going to be applying to my program. We interview 106 people for 9 slots. We do 10 interviews per day. We have 2 separate days that are basically aimed at people who are really research-focused candidates, mostly like PhD people. We shove them all on 2 days, and then we give everybody else separate interview days. And we have a rank meeting every 3 interview days. And so I don't remember what that comes out, 3 or 4. So I think we end up having 4 rank meetings, 3 sort of along the way, and 1 big one at the end. And I mean, we're all kind of looking at the same things. And I think, I think what Dr. Bordeaux was saying about trying to align with your program's mission is absolutely true. But I think, we're talking about a quote unquote holistic review, and a holistic review, what really that means is we're looking at the whole application and we're scoring everything, but everybody still has their own biases about what they think is important. And whether you call that an internal bias or a program mission, it is kind of the same thing, right? So you're trying to decide what it is that's actually important to you. And I think it's important to try to have awareness on our end of what our biases are so that we can decide if they are actually steering us in the right direction or not. So, I think my biases are like when I look at all the things that we look at, which are, everything that she named, we probably tend to put a little more weight on med school clerkship grades than we do on other things. We score everything, but I feel like that is sort of a bias that we lean into because historically, people who've done well in med school, I feel like tend to do well in residency. Maybe that's not true. That's one of my main biases. One of my non-biases is like where you went to med school. I don't care about that at all, and I don't even look at that. I don't even look at step 2 scores until our final rank meeting. We don't look at them when we're deciding who to interview. So like you could argue about whether those are the right biases or not, but I think what you're going to find is that every program has things that they care about implicitly or explicitly. I think the other bias that we have that I'm aware of, and I realize this might not be a favorable bias, is I think we are biased towards people who are extroverted during interviews. Because people who are friendly and talk, you like instinctively like, oh, that person's a good fit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good doctor. It just means there's someone that you get along with well. So I think that's something when we're having our rank meetings, we often spend a lot of time talking about like, so why did we actually give this person a lower score, even though their application looks great? Well, they were kind of a wet noodle during the interview. Okay, but let's kind of step back and think about whether or not that actually means that they're not going to be a good resident. And I think, we still end up probably favoring people that fit those biases, but I think we at least are active in trying to check them. I think that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful. And it's nice to hear that that programs are aware of these things. But also too that it likely varies pretty significantly from place to place.
All right, yeah, so I'm Claire Finkel. I'm PM&R Program Director at University of Missouri. We do 8 candidates per interview day and have them all there together. And each candidate does 6 interviews, primarily with faculty, but they also interview with residents. After each interview day, the interviewers get a feedback form that they fill out. And so we're looking for specific things on that form, not just from the interview day, but also from the review of the application packet. So that it's kind of the combination of the whole experience. So communication is important. So communication skill, attitude, the educational background. We score on maturity and motivation. And then there's an overall, all the way from do not rank or marginal all the way to highly desirable. This is someone we want in our program. And then there's also an overall comment where we encourage people to free text, tell us how the interview went, or overall impression of the candidate. So we take all that and we actually start rank meetings with our residents. So we have monthly meetings, graduate medical education meetings, and our residents put our rank list together. So we usually have 2 or 3 days of interview candidates to go over. And we, like Dr. London had, and well, actually, like both your programs have a rolling rank list that we take through the interview cycle. And when we're all done with interviews, we set aside a couple of dates where it's just the residents and they put their rank list together and get that final rank list. And then we take the resident rank list and we take it to the faculty. And so we try to get as many faculty involved in interviews as possible. It was easier on the days that candidates actually came to our program because we could have you tour all the facilities and interact with a lot more faculty. And so really anybody that's had contact with candidates gets a say in the rank. I would say we don't tend to have a lot of movement off the resident rank list. The residents do spend a good amount of time putting the list together and talking about a lot of the factors that kind of were already previously mentioned tonight. I would say I share Dr. London's assessment of the bias that a friendly outgoing person does tend to interview better, and so we have discussions on that too of maybe they were a little quieter, but what were the factors that led into that, and really trying to address those because we just want residents that are gonna work hard and do good training. And just because you maybe aren't the most outgoing in an interview doesn't mean that you're not going to be an excellent resident. So yeah, we take it to the faculty and then that's kind of the finalized rank list. And that is set usually into January for us, and we certify and then move on.
Awesome. That's really cool how involved the residents are in y'all's process. And it's interesting that you say it doesn't really change much too, because I think the residents really get a good sense of how the applicants are because they spend a lot of time with them. Since you kind of brought it up, Dr. London, Dr. Prito, when is y'all's kind of final rank list usually finished by?
Well, our last interview day is mid-December. So we do our last rank list then with our group. And then I sit and stew about it for about 2 weeks until the new year. And then we lock it. And that's when we also have sort of like a post-lock second look. One of the challenges is you can't actually officially lock your rank list as a program until February, I believe, or around then. And so those of us that are trying to do this thing where we lock it and then open up people to come in for a second look, have to have a system whereby we do it in a way that you trust us that we are doing that. And there is a little bit of trust involved. So in our program, what we do is we actually have people RSVP to a third party. So like we actually swap with the family medicine department where our program coordinator takes their RSVPs for their second look and theirs takes ours. And it's not until our GME office insists that we actually submit our rank list to them, our locked rank list, in January 9th or so, before we're allowed to see those RSVPs. But, you know, theoretically we could be lying about that, but we're not. And I feel like there are some people that still feel like they need to like sign up for this even though they don't plan to go to it. And I don't really know how to convince them that we actually are locking our list.
That's a tough one, but it's nice that y'all are kind of taking extra steps to ensure that.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty similar. Our rank night is usually within days of our last interview day. Everything's pretty fresh at that time. So we do rank night and then it's finalized, but we probably don't put it into NRMP until right after the new year, since it's all the holiday season. So yeah, similar to what Dr. London said. Also, talking all about the bias, I was just wanted to mention that for us, we started having one interviewer on our committee who's blinded, recognizing that reading through applications and such, you can develop a lot of biases, and so it's been an interesting addition to have a blinded interviewer who sometimes checks us on our biases. So
That's a very
it's been
cool and
interesting.
thoughtful addition.
Yeah, it's been
We give
interesting.
all of our interviewers a cheat sheet. I'm gonna just hold one up so you can see without I'm gonna cover up the name because I'm doing some of these tomorrow. But this is like how much information is on a cheat sheet, and that is we do that for every candidate. What it doesn't have is anything about grades or board scores or where they went to med school. So some of the more common biases are left out, but all the stuff about what's in their personal statement and their application, that stuff, like somebody has consolidated that. And we have faculty who take turns helping out with these things, and they're great because then on interview days, people only look at this, but they also get the highlights and they can really sound like they've read the whole application. And I think the applicants appreciate that feeling.
Yeah, that's very cool because I feel like there was some times where I was like, has this person even read the first word of my application? And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I think that's a super helpful way to approach it. The next question, we've kind of hinted around this, but I think it's an important question that I wanted to kind of hear kind of more direct kind of answers to. And it's like, what are you assessing on interview day? What are things that applicants in the past have done that like during the interview, you're like, wow, this person is amazing. What makes a good interview in your eyes?
Well, I would say just I think genuineness really comes across. And so I think by the interview day, my advice to any PM&R applicant is there's no one right way to be a good applicant. My advice is you need to be involved, you need to take advantage of the opportunities that come along, but look for them too. And it may not be that something you dive deep in is PM&R specific, but that's okay because a lot of people don't find our field until later. And so, I really like to look at those experiences and ask people about them. And so when they can, meaningfully speak to what that means to them, that means a lot to me. That's a little tricky now because you all get your 3 experiences that are most meaningful and you get to spell that out right on the application. And so I recognize that it is a balance of want to make sure you all are aware that we're reading your application. And but usually it's kind of a spin on those experiences. And I think every interviewer might be a little different in what they find is, I think you could probably get thousands of answers to this.
This is true.
Well, I think, I'm looking for people who get excited about medicine, right? And I love it when you ask somebody a question about something in their application and their eyes light up and they just are like, like clearly this is like a thing they're really excited to engage about. And I think that kind of ties in with like a sense of optimism, I think, about medicine is a really nice thing that shines through in interviews. I like people that are very thoughtful and don't always just kind of take exactly what I'm spoon feeding them and just agree with everything I'm saying. People who actually like take a step back and think about the questions and think about their answers. And I think that ties in with I think something that Dr. Bordeaux was sort of bringing up before, which is I think a lot of interviews you're going to find are very conversational, and then some include these what people are calling behavioral questions, which are standard questions that they give to everybody. And I think we are being encouraged to use more of those by our GME offices, and I think that's kind of considered to be a best practice because if you ask everybody the same question, then rather than being like, oh, you like windsurfing and labradoodles, I like windsurfing and labradoodles, let's talk about that, and then you're going to end up just recruiting a bunch of people that are like you. But the problem I find with the behavioral questions, and again, I'm expressing my cynicism here because I don't need to recruit any of you, is that this is very much a two-way street. Like we're trying to check our own biases for sure, but we also want to impress you. We want you to rank us number one. And I think giving interviews that feel very stiff, which I feel behavioral questions often do, tell me about a time when you overcame something. What that really is doing is it's inviting people to often give canned and rehearsed answers. And then what you end up, when you're looking for that genuineness, you're looking for people that either haven't thought about that before or people that are really good at creating an illusion of improvisation, which is really more of an acting skill than an interview skill. So we have people that do standardized questions on our committee, and then also people like myself whose job is to more be a cheerleader and just get people excited. I think it takes both, but I'm still not convinced that doing all the behavioral questions is the right way to go overall. Sorry, I got on my soapbox there. That was a little off topic, but
No, it's nice to kind of hear arguments for, various approaches.
Yeah, awesome. I think your soapbox is pretty great. So yeah, I would say similar things, someone who shows a lot of enthusiasm and energy in the interview, that passion is important. Passion for PM&R, passion for things that they've done, right? I love to see that things on their application are not just, checking a box to get this and that done, but that they actually do things and have passion for them and can speak on that. I guess one thing that you could say that you could also look at this and say does not make a good impression. In Rochester, Minnesota, right? If there's a lot of questions about the weather or what things that we do in Rochester, is there anything to do in Rochester? Things that make me feel like maybe they're not interested in coming to our program necessarily. Scripted answers tend to, if it's all really scripted, I love the more genuine, more sincere, thoughtful answers with depth and thought to them as well. So, those are some things that come across
Thank
that
you.
we often talk about.
Yeah, that is really helpful. And shameless plug for Rochester weather. It's been pretty nice this summer.
I'd like to add to that too, because there are a few make or break things. And so the break things, there are really quick ways to get to the bottom of our rank list, and professionalism issues during the interview are one. And so I don't want to freak anyone out and make you second guess. So maybe some specific examples are disparaging comments about some of your instructors or other institutions. The interview is not the place to say things like that. You have a little bit of time with us. And so, that positivity, that enthusiasm is really important. And making sure that, I don't remember which of the other program directors had mentioned, coordinators, talking with them. It's really important that you treat everyone well. And so, it will get back to the ranking committee if you've been disrespectful to anyone along the process. Rehab is a team sport. And so we want people that recognize the importance of everyone on the team. And so really just keeping that in mind when you're going through the process.
That's a very helpful point. It's, we always try to think about how we can make sure we do good, but we also got to make sure we're not doing those things as well. So the next question, I'm not sure exactly how the signal setup is for neurology, but I'm kind of curious of how, post-interview, where does geographic signaling and like program signaling have any weights or effects? Or is that mostly something you're looking at prior to interviews?
I think for me, that's a pretty easy answer. I would say that might come into play more for offering an interview, but not in making our rank list.
I agree. Yeah, and I think the data nationally shows that most people are using it to help you get interviews. And then yeah, for us again, it's not considered when we're making the rank list.
And there's really no logical reason for programs to consider that when making a rank list, right? I mean, we have no incentive for ranking people in any order other than the order that we would want to have them. So whether you want us or not, theoretically should have no bearing on that. But I want to mention that there's an element of human psychology that people like to be liked. And I think, I think we all think that we're immune to it. But I think this is why people still do thank you notes and letters of intent and, that kind of stuff, because again, it shouldn't affect the way we rank you at all. But maybe it's some like hidden level, like, well, I really like that this person likes me, and maybe that makes me like them more. And again, we try very hard to check that bias, but I think that's just human psychology. And I think that's why people do that stuff.
This is a perfect segue to where I was wanting to head with our last couple of minutes. I think two questions I get asked time and time again are about the letters of, I'll say, interest. Essentially, this is like before someone gets an interview, they send a email expressing their interest, that they are very interested and would like to be an interview candidate. And then a letter of intent, kind of at the end of the year, where they're saying, I'm going to rank you first. How do y'all interpret that information? Does it have any, I know Dr. London was saying maybe it has some kind of subconscious kind of weight, but do y'all factor those in? Do y'all keep those in a file anywhere? Do y'all discuss those? How do y'all approach those two things?
Oh yeah, we don't use those. And in fact, I don't share those. So no, they're not kept in a file. I don't share them with the residents or the faculty that are making the rank list. So they wouldn't even know that you'd sent that. And my mentor, Dr. Burris, who was the program director here for a very long time before me, maybe it's his cynicism that now I've picked up that you could write that same email to every program out there. And so our job is to not make the rank list based off of things like that. It's to make it on who do we genuinely want in our program. And so I exclude those from the folks that are making the rank list. They don't know about them.
I would agree. So for the rank list, I mean, for one thing, since our rank night is pretty early, it's very common that we're done ranking before a lot of those letters come in. But yeah, we wouldn't necessarily change our rank list based on getting a letter of intent from someone. As far as getting a letter ahead of interview season, ahead of offering interviews, I mean, it's nice to know if people are interested in our program, right? We want to talk to people who are interested in our program. And I like to fill my interview slots with people who are interested in my program, and always wonder if, why they apply to my program if they're not interested in it. But so their name becomes a little more familiar, but we still do the holistic application review in totality. And certainly there's some folks who I communicate with who aren't offered interviews, but certainly their name may be a little more familiar to me.
So the letter of interest is basically the same thing as the signal before the signals existed, except the signals, we know you have a limited number of them. The letter of interest, you literally can and probably will and should and do send that to everybody you're interviewing at, and that's fine.
Fair point, fair point.
The letter of intent thing, yeah, I mean, please do not, if you're going to do it, do not send a letter to more than one program saying you're going to rank them number one. I think I've had one person who has done that over the years that ended up not matching with us, that we had ranked high enough to match. But I think it was because she sent the letter too early and then had like 5 more interviews afterwards and then changed her mind. So I forgive it a little bit. But I think your point is a really good one, which is we're locking our rank list earlier and earlier. So all program directors are going to tell you not to do that letter of intent. I'm going to tell you to think about it, again, as the outsider here, just because, again, human psychology, I think maybe present company excluded still may have some bearing. But now the challenge is that a lot of programs are ranking early, and you might not be done with your interviews yet. And can you, in all good faith, send a letter like that before you finish your interviews? That's a sort of a tough ethical call, because you don't want to have to change your mind afterwards. That would be I think word gets around if you do that.
That's it's interesting and helpful to hear different perspectives and approaches. So I appreciate having your outside opinions for sure.
Yeah, I guess I always assume that if we get a letter of intent that they don't send it to anyone else, but maybe I shouldn't.
But if you're couples matching, you can lie, because you can always just blame the couples match part.
There you go. Sneaky.
Man.
Well, I know we're kind of getting up against time, so is there any kind of departing thoughts or words of wisdom that any of y'all have? If not, I feel like y'all have shared so much already.
I don't know. I guess we talk about it being stressful, but I hope people enjoy it too. It's a very busy time of the year for us, but I get so pumped up to meet all these applicants who, have such bright futures ahead of them, and so I hope you take the time to just know that you deserve to be where you are, and you deserve all the interviews that you're getting, and just take time to enjoy the process as well.
I would agree. It is such a pleasure to get to meet so many of you, and then talk with everyone else that got to meet you too. And most of you won't match at our program, but it is so fun to see where you do end up and cross paths in the future, because it's a small field. So I would agree, try to enjoy it and know that whatever happens, we always say we match our top 4 residents. The ones that we match are the ones that are supposed to be at our program. And I think the same of where you all match too. So try to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, the match is, it's barbaric, right? There's nothing else in the world that operates like this. And yet I am a true believer. I think it actually gets people where they belong. So trust the process, and remember that everybody you meet along the way is part of your community. PM&R is very small, and these are going to be your people, whether you match there or not. So look at this as an opportunity to meet all your new friends, your new fellow nerds.
Awesome. I can't think of a better way to drop the mic than that. Well, thank y'all so much for y'all's time. I really appreciate it, staying up late with us, and I hope y'all have a wonderful end of y'all's match season as well.
Thanks, Hunter.
Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we will kind of switch gears a little bit, and now we'll have a couple residents available to answer any questions. If you want to, y'all can go ahead and start putting them in the chat, and then we can start tackling them that way. Let me try to repin our residents. Not sure. Is Preston, John, Kate? I see Kate. All right. Let's see. And then John. And there's my man Preston. All right. I think that's everybody. Okay, perfect. Well, thank y'all so much for coming for part 2 of tonight's session. I think we have a lot to live up to, but I know that we have excellent cast here. So I guess we can just start and kind of, I'll just have y'all kind of introduce yourself. We can start with you, Kate.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for Pathways in PM&R. I'm Kate. I'm a PGY1 at University of Missouri. I'm technically in prelim internal medicine here, but staying on with PM&R with Dr. Finkel, who you all just met. So originally from Kentucky and matched here with my partner, and so I can talk about couples matching. Anyone has questions about that, and happy to help you all. Please ask away.
Awesome. And John?
Hey guys, my name is John. PGY1 right now, doing my prelim year at the University of Chicago North Shore campus, and then next year I'll be heading off to Shirley Ryan in Chicago.
And Preston.
Hey everybody, my name is Preston. Also PGY1, doing my prelim year at St. Joe's Hospital in Denver, and then going to University of Colorado for PM&R. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And I'm Hunter, PGY1 at Mayo in Rochester, doing intern year here and then staying for residency. So yeah, excited to have y'all here. Really, this is an open floor. So if y'all want to submit questions into the chat, or if y'all want to unmute yourself and ask, really, we're here for anything. It can be related to the application, interviews, rank list. We're really just here to help answer any questions that we can. So we'll start with Abby's question. Do you know if programs rank us one by one, or is there some kind of grouping? I'm just trying to kind of get a sense of how the crazy algorithm works. Does anyone want to try to tackle that one?
I can try to give it a shot. Basically, everything I know about the match algorithm is from their YouTube video that they put out. There's a pretty good YouTube video that the NMRP put out, basically explaining a sort of simplified version of it. It gets more complicated when you throw in things like couples matching and the military matching, things like that. But they do rank you individually, and there is a proprietary algorithm that the NMRP uses to basically match you up with your own rank list. So the answer is by individual. And if I got any part of that wrong, anybody please feel free to jump in.
No, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think that sounds pretty spot on. I know that they do it individually, but I don't know like if they have like certain like I don't know, like tiers or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure they just make a list just like you will, like 1 through whatever, and they have kind of a big powwow at the end of the season where they, I think most of them have like a rolling rank list, and then towards the end of the season they sit down and kind of do some fine tuning to really make the final rank list. I guess this is kind of a question that we talked about with the PD, so I'm interested to kind of hear y'all's side of things. If y'all used either like letters of interest or letters of intent, and if so, how do you think? Did you have any responses to that, or did you feel like it helped or not? Yeah.
The only ones I used were as a means of like couples matching. So like there was a program where my partner had an interview. He's in internal medicine, and he reached out to them, and I got an interview there. That was the only one that worked. Most of the time, it didn't work, or it was so late in the season. So I do recommend doing that earlier rather than later. Reaching out to people if you are couples matching. Yeah, that was about the only time I did. I didn't do it from like a one standpoint because I was kind of, we were sort of a team trying to match somewhere.
Yeah, John or Preston, did y'all have any of those?
So I did not send any letter of interest. I thought they were sort of a lost cause, but that's just my personal belief. I know friends who did send letters of interest with some success, so I guess it's a case-by-case scenario. But I did send a letter of intent as well. I don't really know how much that really played into effect of where I stood on the rank list, but I think for my mental sake, it just gave me closure on everything happening.
I feel like I mean that's honestly worth its weight in gold itself. Just having that peace of mind that you left it all out there, you did everything, and you let them know where you stand. And so if anything, I feel like it's helpful for that point thing. But I will say for letters of interest, I didn't do any for PM&R, but I actually did do them for like prelim programs, and I was actually 2 for 2 with those. So I mean, I know there's not a huge sample size, but I think a lot of prelim programs are looking for people who are just interested to be there. They're going to be excited to show up. And I think it can kind of lend to some success. I'm not saying it's going to work, 100% of the time, every time, but I think it's something to consider, especially if, there's an area that you want to try to live in, or, you want to be close to family or a partner or something like that. I think it's worth a shot. As far as the question of, what's considered early and late in the cycle, um, I feel like it varies quite a bit. The prelim programs kind of run on a later time frame than the PM&R programs. So, PM&R programs are hearing like their final rank lists are almost submitted like end of December, so early to them maybe closer to like October-ish, Whereas like the prelim interviews, like most of mine were later in the season, even into like January. I had a couple in February. So like you may have some time to do those a little bit later. Let's see. All right. What factors were most important to y'all when you were kind of making your rank list?
I would say it was a lot of things, and it was pretty overwhelming to me at first when I was trying to sort out all the programs in my head, going through the interview trail, and eventually stumbled across this really good Notion template that sort of outlined some common factors that are important to a lot of people, including like geography or benefits and like what the fellowship matches are like from that program and just the breadth of subspecialties of PM&R that you would see. But it ultimately like I started with geography just because I like needed to start from somewhere, because there's so many factors that like I felt that I had to consider, that it was just easier to start with something at least that was concrete and straightforward. So I started with geography, and then second most important to me was what I wanted to do in PM&R afterwards, and like what the program would offer. And so for me, I was like looking for a program that was pretty uh, expansive and would give me exposure to a lot of things in PM&R, just because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. And so going somewhere with a with really good rotations and everything, including things, smaller things like cancer rehab and stuff like that, was important to me. And then all the other stuff like benefit, salary, and stuff like those were less important. But that's kind of how I initially approached it.
I had a very similar process. The only thing that was different for me was that, and this was advice from a mentor back in med school, was another thing that was important to me was like being primary essentially because I think, depending on where you go, PM&R can be just almost exclusively consulting, especially, and I mean, everyone has a different approach to how they want to eventually practice. But what was important to me was that no matter where I ended up upon graduation, I would be hireable wherever I went because I felt comfortable in my basic medicine skills and my ability to handle being primary, right? I didn't want to limit my job opportunities by that. And so that was also something that I looked into. And it's hard to find, right? And so that's why I tended a bit more towards programs that did have an independent rehab facility that wasn't just a wing on a hospital, because then you're forced a little bit, you don't have the consultants that are with the whole hospital, and then you're forced to sort of do more things on your own and be more self-sufficient. Granted, there are pros and cons to all of that approach, and it depends on what you want to do. That was just something that I focused on.
Yeah, I feel like both of those are excellent points. And I think this kind of highlights like it's going to vary pretty significantly from person to person based off, what your interests are, what your passions are. Just because I like something doesn't mean you will. But I will say for me, something that was important was, I had a pretty strong interest in pain and sports. So I wanted to make sure I was going to get pretty robust, like outpatient procedural kind of exposure. And, within PM&R, I think there's two kind of spheres. There's like the outpatient MSK, PM&R site staff, and then inpatient neuro rehab. And, the programs can range pretty drastically. Some of them can be very heavily inpatient focused. And, if you want to do inpatient rehab, you're going to benefit probably from going to a program like that. But if you're interested in pain and spine, then maybe doing 2.5 years of inpatient rehab isn't the best option for you. So really kind of trying to think about what you may be interested in. And, you may be kind of thinking how Preston was and you don't know, and that's totally fine. But going to a program that gives you options, then maybe something to look forward. So, a lot of things that kind of go into it. But I think I'll echo what Preston said too. I didn't really factor too much into like the salary and benefits and things like that. I think, for the most part, so they're pretty standardized across the board. Sure, there may be a little bit of difference based off, cost of living. But to me, like the training is something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I've already got so much debt from med school, like I can survive a little more. I think this is a good question. Do you guys have any tips for how you express like your strong interests for a program, like during the interview or kind of like around before and after the interview?
I feel like several programs during the interview process would ask why you were interested in their program. So I always went in having done homework ahead of time to see what it was that they had going on. And I think a big way, at least for me, of expressing my interest in a program was, explaining to them how what they had aligned with what I was looking for in a program. So if they were really well-rounded and they were close to family and X, Y, and Z, then I was like emphasizing that a lot, because then I think then we realized that, hey, our values overlap, and that hence I'm really interested.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it was basically like I identified what I liked about the program and how it kind of tied with my interest, and then just try to be enthusiastic about that. And I feel like that really kind of resonates when you're genuine about it. Like they can tell that you're very excited intrinsically. I'm sure some people can pull it off and fake it, but I can't. And don't think most people can. So I think, just exploring the program and finding genuine interest in it really will go a long ways just by being true.
I would echo that above as well, especially relating it back to things you talked about in your own application makes it seem more genuine. Like it should be more genuine that way too. Um, really helps for it to come off in a positive way, to like relate it back to either your experiences that you put in your URAS application or your personal statement. Um, things that are like that you would see in that program. So
So the next question is, in this kind of age where most of the interviews are virtual and it's really hard to kind of get a feel for, what the true culture and vibe of the program is. Through y'all's cycle doing interviews and socials, do you feel like you were able to kind of get a good feel of what being at the program was really like? And I know that may be a hard question because you haven't actually been to a lot of these places, but maybe wherever you ended up, do you feel like your interview kind of matched with kind of what you're experiencing now?
Can't comment on if my interview day aligned with my audition there. So I'll hold off on that. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to kind of gauging how a residency program is, I think the most important thing to attend is probably like a resident social hour or a resident Q&A. Just something that's not too tied with the program, where it's kind of more informal, where you can ask the questions that you're really um, curious about, whether that be what's your typical day, is didactic time actually protected, and things like that. And I think that's where most residents are most truthful to you when the program directors aren't around and all that stuff. So I think if programs do offer a specific resident social hour Q&A session, you should definitely go to get a better sense of how residents are treated.
Yeah, I think that's the best advice I could possibly give too. Like, it's so hard, like to know what it's like. But I think the socials give you the best glimpse and understanding of like what the culture is there, what kind of people are there, what do they like to do. I feel like that's when you can get the best glimpse of like the true people. And even then, it's not perfect, but I think it's the best thing you can do. And I know like later in the season, there's so much Zoom fatigue. Like even like I'm impressed that y'all are here. I know you are so sick of Zooms and hearing people talk and awkward breakout rooms and everything like that. But I promise you, it's the best thing you can do. So don't miss those. I think they can be valuable.
I would agree. And if you can, try to visit programs in person, like especially for second looks. Fortunately, I was able to do one second look because I was in the area anyway, for University of Miami. And it ended up being very similar to the vibes that I got over Zoom and like over the resident social. Um, I would say pay attention to like when you're going to the socials, pay attention to how the residents interact with each other, and how like happy they seem. And not to be like, of course, it's going to be a part of the interview in a way, the resident socials, but not being afraid to ask the questions that like you would be shy to ask during interview days, just because like unless you're really botching the interview or like super rude on or the resident social, or you're like super rude during the resident social, most residents aren't going to remember like the questions you ask or anything like that. So it helps. It really is for your sake. The only thing that I would say is hard to get over, like to get a feel for over the Zoom format, is what the environment's gonna be like, specifically like the buildings and stuff. Because I think like a lot of people underestimate what the facility, how that will impact your well-being when you're there, which sounds kind of like stupid, but it's true. Like the quality of the buildings, the resources that you get there, you might not be able to see that over Zoom, and it kind of it makes a difference. So that's one challenge that I remember seeing.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about that, but you spend so much time like in the workroom, in the cafeteria, is there free coffee? That makes a huge difference. So I think these are all important things to ask the residents on your interview. Um, I think Kate, this one may be best for you, but kind of sharing your experiences with like couples matching, and is there any like specific resources that you found helpful, or just kind of general advice for people going through that? Because I know it's such a confusing and difficult
Yeah.
process.
I didn't learn till very late that it's not just like you put like Missouri, Kentucky, Kentucky, you don't just put like each program, each rank is the pair of them. So it ended up like, even if, that's why there is listed a like 300 max rank list. Cause I remember when I first learned that, I was like, who has 300 interviews? It's because of couples, because you're doing the pairs of them. And I learned this embarrassingly late. So I'm letting you all know now. And so it can be kind of a tough conversation between you and the person that you're couples matching with. Because like for us, it was going to be like, well, we know we can't do long distance. And so how this is really going to like make or break our future. And that can be very stressful. And I, completely empathize with any of you all that are going through that right now. So what we ultimately did was we put the ones that were in the same geographic, like it's in the same city together, and then did that in our preferred order. And then we did it in like geographically feasible like distances, like one, a program that was 2 hours away from another or something. And then did that in a preferred order. We used a lot of like Google Sheets and like spent an hour or several hours like going through this. The other thing is that you can also on your main rank list put prelim programs alone. And this goes for even people who aren't in a couple. Like you can list all of your PM&R programs, and then even on your main match list, not just the supplemental one, also put all of your prelim programs at the bottom. So like just in case for some reason you fell all the way down your list, you don't end up going unmatched, like you are still going somewhere for the year. And so you can even do that option with all those prelim programs with the other person in the couple's rank lists. So that's how people end up with very, very long rank lists. And the last part of this that's specific for couples is that there is like a 9999 something, which is a no match code essentially, and what it means is that if you put it on there, like on one side of the list, matched to, because again, it's in pairs. If you do the 9999 matched with, one other person's school, it means if you drop all the way down the list, then like one person will still match in the couple. Because if you don't do that, then it's like saying if we don't match together, we don't match at all. And you can do that, but I highly discourage it because it's much harder to match when you've gone unmatched. And that's not to say that doesn't happen for, people don't get back in, but statistically it is much more difficult to match if you aren't going somewhere the next year. So I highly, highly, highly recommend at the very bottom of your list putting those options in that like 999, whatever it is, code. And I'll let you all can disperse it however you want. There are a lot of values discussions with these. But what we ended up doing, because my partner is in internal medicine and there are a lot more internal medicine programs, it would be a lot easier for him to SOAP. We ended up putting all of my PM&R programs in his like no match, in that order, that my preferred order, with again versus his no match, and then did his for mine because there are fewer PM&R programs than there are IM. Sorry, that was a spiel. It is
That is insane just how complicated that is.
Mhm.
So thanks for sharing. I think that
Yeah.
is super helpful to, I had no idea there even that much was going on.
Yeah, but yeah, that's applicable for everybody, is that you can put the prelim programs on your main rank list at the very bottom, so that way you increase your chance of going somewhere.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question is, what do you have any thoughts about, ranking programs who have like an advanced and a categorical option? Like how did you approach the way to rank those? Did you rank them back to back? Did you spread them out? Yeah. I don't mind starting. So I only had a couple that were like that, but my biggest thing was like program, like PM&R training came first. So I basically made my list based off like my PM&R interests, regardless of categorical or advanced. And then, if a program had both options, then I ranked both like back to back. My preference was categorical because I didn't want to move twice. So for everywhere I did categorical and then the advanced option. But that can vary pretty widely based on what you're looking for and your interests.
Yeah, I similarly didn't want to have to move, and I didn't want to end up, it would be more complicated again as matching as a couple to be like essentially long distance for a year, and so I ended up doing mostly categoricals towards the top. Mizzou was an exception. It's technically an advanced program, but if you apply for the internal medicine, like as long as you submit it on ERAS, like they just tell the internal medicine department who they're interested in. And so it like worked out staying in the same place, essentially. It's basically categorical in that way. But for the most part, yeah, I was ranking categorical higher just so that I didn't have to move and be long distance.
Yeah. Anyone have like a last question burning that they want to ask? I know it's getting late.
Yeah, I tried to answer any question that we didn't tackle. Not in the chat. So if you guys think of anything else, we'll put in our contact information too.
Yeah, I'll drop my email. Yeah, well, I think it's a good kind of place to wrap up. I really appreciate y'all coming to spend some time with us and kind of share y'all's experiences and y'all's wisdom. And thanks for everyone who stuck with us for the whole time. And I hope this was really helpful for y'all. I think, later in the season, maybe towards January, I'm thinking about doing like a rank list focused type event. So we can really kind of dig into the nitty gritty of how we kind of approached making our rank list and things we kind of really factored and discussions and approaches with spouses and everything like that. So I think that may be something helpful. So keep an eye out. Join our email list if you haven't already. I'll drop the link one more time. Follow us on the social media accounts. We got a lot of things coming your way. So thanks again for everyone coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you guys.